Now, all the cards for the Chronicles expansion are out. I want to go through them real quick and give my thoughts on them. That way we can come back later and make fun of me for being wrong. So, let's begin with Northern Realms. We have Bullholt. So, Human Soldier, 2 power, 1 armor, 12 provisions. This is their legendary card. So, he's Formation. Formation is always a nice keyword to see on Northern Realms cards, gives you flexibility. He's got Order. Spawn a base copy of an allied bronze soldier on its row. Whenever you spawn a soldier, boost self by 2. So immediately he'll probably spawn a copy. We'll just say an average bronze soldier value is 4. He'll play with Formation, assuming you're going to use the Formation. He'll get 2 points of boost when you use the Order, and then he will spawn the soldiers, say that's about 4. So on average, he'll play for about 8 points a turn you play him. However, it's worth noting this card has really high potential for a couple of reasons. One, there's our engine decks, like King Foltest will spawn soldiers. This does count in hand or deck, so that means if you play King Foltest, you gain 2 points a turn, which is pretty good. The other thing to note here is that the Stockpile Leader Charge spawns the Recruit guy, which is a soldier, and the Pincer Maneuver also spawns that guy. Especially for Stockpile, you can have King Radovid a lot of time will give you 5 leader charges. So you play this, make the copy of a soldier. With his ability, he's a 4, and you play 5 leader charges with the Stockpile. Now, Stockpile leader charges are usually best with siege machines, siege engines, because they have cooldowns, whatever. But you could play it with Bullholt, just saying as an option, because each one will give you an extra 2 points, so each leader charge will be worth 4. You could do this be a 28-point play, which is pretty good, obviously, but it's just worth pointing that out. And Pincer Maneuver potential here as well. So, and mobilization, especially if you're playing the new cards we'll get to in a minute here. So overall, I think this card's pretty good. I think you're going to see a lot of people trying out the new Reavers and this guy. It can see play as well in decks like Blue Stripes Commandos. It's less good in Cintron Royal Guards, which is the other deck that likes to spawn a bunch of bronzes, because it spawns the copy, doesn't spawn and play it. So Cintron Royal Guards, not going to like this guy as much, but you could still use him. Overall, though, I think this guy seems pretty good. I'm pretty sure you're going to always be using the Formation, because at 2 with 1 power, or 2 power with 1 armor, he's super weak. I think you're pretty much always going to use the Formation or boost him. So I think this card's good. I think we'll see it. Next up, we have Kenna and Gar. So, Human Soldier once again. 6 power, 9 provisions. He has Formation. Order destroy an enemy unit with 2 or less power. So this is just on face value, he's going to play for 8 if you do this, and there's a 2 power unit. There's not always 2 power units, worth keeping that in mind. Whenever you spawn a soldier, increase the limit by 1. Obviously, this synergizes pretty well with Bullholt. This synergizes well with some other cards. Same thing I said with Bullholt applies here. You can use leaders to spawn these guys, which is pretty nice. Although in this case, I think you're going to be wanting to do more of just playing all the Reavers together. So this card's interesting. I think this one you're going to use the Formation more for the +1 boost than the 2 order, or the Zeal order. But you could use the Zeal order if you got stuff set up to spawn soldiers. Stuff like the new Reavers, again, we'll get to those. They can have the order to spawn something, so you can get this to a 3 right away. Potentially more if you have 2 Reavers out. That's possible. You could play him and then use leader charges. You could, like I said before, there's plenty of ways to spawn soldiers during the same turn. Most of them involve leaders or having something with order out. So I think this guy's pretty good. Just having a destroy ability means most of the time your opponent has to kill it. If you play this early and then you play a bunch of soldiers in your soldier deck, it's going to get up to like 8 or 10, and that's just too much value, I think, to let happen. However, this is only really going to be good in a longish round. Well, only like insane in a longish round. In like a shorter round, like you have like this goes up to 4 or 5, which is still good, by the way. That's still pretty good. Getting decent value, but he has a 9 provision card, so destroying a 4 or 5 is that which kind of what you would expect from him. So you really want to get him in those long rounds where you can have those extra spawns. But then again, I think you can probably set that up with these Reaver decks. So then again, I think this guy will be pretty good. Although this one I'm less certain will be played in every deck, but I'm pretty sure it's good. People want destroy abilities. If you've seen Renfree destroy an 8 or 10 before, yeah, destroy is just really strong. So I think this will be good because of that. But you're going to have to play long rounds with it most of the time, or have leader charges or some way to trigger it quite a bit in a short round. Next up, we have Reaver Hunters. So, Reaver Hunters is the Bronze Engine card. This is really the payoff for a lot of these spawning cards we've seen so far. 2 power, 2 armor, 5 provision engine. So, Human Soldier, once again, Order spawn a base copy of self on this row and set its base power to 1 less than self. Bonded, at the end of your turn, damage the highest power enemy unit by 1. So it doesn't play for very much. It plays for 2 with 2 armor, and has the order spawn a base copy of self on this row. So obviously that's going to be nice, because it gives you the bonded right away if you can do the order. That being said, it doesn't have formation or zeal. So if you want to get this order right away, you're going to have to play Inspired Zeal, or play something like Siege Support, Vess. I can't remember her name. The card that gives every Northern Realms card Zeal. Is it Ida? Alright, so this is the card I was about to mention. Ildico here. So Human Mage, this is the card that works really well with these. Boost an ally by 4. But here's the card. Whenever you play a Northern Realms unit, give it Zeal. This is probably good. With the new cards in this deck for the Reavers, she, I think, is worth mentioning just because of how much value she gives to these cards. So we look at Reaver Hunters. If you give these things Zeal, note that it spawns, it doesn't play with its order, so you're just getting Zeal in the first one, but having cards like that give Zeal might be really good and worth including with these Hunters. Just want to point that out. Ildico in particular seems really good with this. So the bonded effect then is highest power enemy takes 1 damage. It is 2 damage a turn from this because you're spawning a second one from it. Not the first turn, but it's going to be 1 damage a turn each, but this makes 2 on its own, so we're going to basically count as 2 damage each if it's not answered. Damaging the highest unit is good and bad. It's 2 damage, which is nice against Wild Hunt and Dominance. It's good to hit the tallest unit. In general, it's bad to hit the tallest unit, though, because the tallest unit's usually the one you want to Heat Wave or Reset, or use your removal cards on, or poisons. So this makes stuff like Heat Wave weaker, unless you're going to only use Heat Wave on scenarios, which is possible, but it is good value, really good value. Like 2 a turn's really good value, and you can combine this with stuff like the previously mentioned cards like Bullholt. You can use him to spawn a base copy. You can spawn another one of the base copies of these, then use that one to make another Reaver. Spamming Reavers looks like it's going to be very good, so that's worth noting. And yeah, the melee effect is going to be pretty good. The only thing with it is it does only play for 2 points. Because 2 of its strength, 2 of its kind of healthish is caught up in this armor. So it doesn't play for a ton right away, but it's going to be pretty good because you can spawn out a bunch of tokens here. Then that is its weakness, though. In short rounds, this isn't going to be great. But again, that's true of most engine decks. There's this one more so than others, just because you're going to have the most engines that are like that play for 4. And then you get engine value each turn. It plays for 2, then you get engine value each turn. It takes a little longer, but the engine payoff is quite high. In a lot of ways, this reminds me of Crossbowmen for Northern Realms, or Nilfgaard last patch. Crossbowmen was essentially 2 a turn if you had the playing a soldier and the flanking, and it was very strong for a while, but people figured out that like engines like that, you can answer them. However, I think in this case, you'll have higher potential because you can spawn more copies of this, and the Crossbowman needed flanking and playing a soldier. This just has to be there. It is melee locked, which is definitely worth noting. The melee lock is going to be kind of impactful here. But overall, I think the card is pretty good, and we'll see a lot of people trying to spam these out and getting good engine value. The last card for Northern Realms, then, is the Reaver Scout. As order, spawn and play a base copy of an allied soldier, excluding self. Now, note this is spawn and play, which means it supports quite a bit. You can use this on Blue Striped Scouts instead of the Blue Striped Commando. You can use this on Cintron Royal Guard to create another Royal Guard and play it for extra points. I think that deck will be very happy to see this in particular. Worth noting is 2 power and 1 armor, so it is at 3 total health. If you 3 damage, you can kill this. That's very weak. 3 is usually killable by most decks without playing like a dedicated removal card. Stuff like the Dwarf does 3 damage. There's Coup that does 3 damage. The Wild Hunt dude puts out 2 damage and a Frost. That's really 4, but a lot of stuff can do 3 damage, which makes this... I mean, the effect is very strong, so it's worth it being weak with an order. However, once again, mention Ildico again. If you have a way to give Zeal, this is very, very strong, right? Because if this thing gets Zeal, and you play it, and you spawn and play another card, if that's a 5 version card you're playing, this card is giving you a 5 version card and 2 extra points, which is very, very good. So, I think this card is going to be good. I think you want to remove it. The only weakness I really see for this is that if you don't have Zeal, it's a low tempo play, which is obvious and it'll get removed or locked, in which case it's very poor. And the last weakness I want to mention this card is Nilfgaard, because Nausicaa Sergeant if it's not getting changed. I haven't checked the patch notes yet. I'm recording this, but we'll check those after this. But if Nautical Sergeant isn't getting changed, this is a very, very bad card to play against Nilfgaard if they're running Duchess Informants or Coup. So that is one thing to keep in mind. That being said, again, it is a 3, so if they do copy it, you can kill it. The only problem with and then the non-run free decks, like they could amnesty this if they're playing Nausicaa Sergeants, and that's really bad. But that happens when you have low power cards. I think overall this thing's pretty good, but it might be too slow. We'll see. It might be too slow, but you can't answer every engine. So if you're playing stuff like these and the other Reavers, eventually some of them are going to stick. And I think overall these guys are going to be pretty good. Next up, we have Beauclair. This is the Nilfgaard location legendary card. 13 provisions. Pretty simple here. We have Resilience. Deploy set an allied unit's power to match the highest power enemy, and order reset the power of a unit. So at 13 provisions, it's very expensive, but these are very, very good effects. So it's worth noting for the new Nilfgaard cards, a lot of them are based on boosting the enemy, kind of like Nilfgaardian Knight. You get stuff for boosting the enemy. Kahir can pay off stuff like these as well, but we'll talk about him when we get to the other cards. Second, allied unit's power to match highest power enemy is generally very good because you're going to pick your lowest unit and then boost by the highest enemy and set them equal. So that's pretty good. If you're boosting the enemy units with the other new Nilfgaard cards, this will be very high potential, and you can reset the opponent's unit so you don't give them points. The fact that it is a location means you can reset this with Twin Viandra, which is really good. And overall, I think this is a very strong card. It's just questionable if you have enough provisions to fit it in decks. This is not a unit. You can't put it in a Renfrey deck. And then, which means you're kind of competing for slots in, like, usually this is our Terra Nova slot, the 13 provisions. So you probably keep competing in those decks, or you might make your own deck based on this. I don't really think this fits super well into Assimilate right now, which is fine. Assimilate's been one of the only Nilfgaard decks for a really long time. But I think this is good. The resilience on the reset really helps in a round 3. If you want to bleed or push round 2, then save this order to reset their finisher against something that has a boosted finisher like a Herald Gord. It's really good. The only thing is it's really expensive, so if you're not getting good value, that could be a problem. But overall, I think you'll be able to find value with the setting power. The only time I don't see this doing well is stuff like Syndicate Poisons, which spam out so much removal. But I think this generally is a good card. Next up, we have Guillaume de L'Enfel. Again, I apologize if I pronounce all these cards wrong. I will try my best. But we have 8 provisions for 6 power. Human Knight. Nice to see Knights in Nilfgaard a bit more. Got to watch out for bribery or to double cross into that Knight scenario, because some of them do have grace, like this guy. So he's got deploy, boost self and an enemy unit by half their combined power. So on face value, this plays for even. You both get the same boost. However, you saw Beauclair in the last card, and there's more cards here that pay off for this enemy boost because you can reset the boost. Spores comes to mind. You can remove it with Invocation. You could have Kahir out. Kahir works well with all these new cards. Kahir is kind of limited because he has to be melee and he's a 5 power. But Kahir can be a win condition just against some decks. And with these cards down in play, maybe he'll see more play. That'd be nice. But the real effect here, the other good part of this effect is he's got Order Grace 14. Move all statuses from enemy unit to self. Now, there's a couple reasons this is really good. You can move Defender status, which is the one that obviously comes to mind first of all, and Resilience status. So against Siri Nova, this is really, really bad because Siri Nova will have to purify you because they don't run usually removals that can deal with this type of stuff, especially if it's Syndicate Golden Necker, which is the most common Siri Nova deck, because they'll steal the Siri Nova's the Veil and the Resilience, and then they can't poison it, and then you have his Resilience thing, which is really good. So in some matchups, this is gonna be really good and has to be has to be removed. Other times, though, it's gonna get really tall, so they could remove it. However, it's worth noting that if you boost self in an enemy, then you reset the enemies, you've just gained all those points and the opponent hasn't. If you're playing removal of your own, say you're running like Peter, or you're running Poisons, or you're running Invocation Heatwave, you can just kill the thing you boost from the opponent. So you can just use all these boost opponent cards on one unit that's really, really tall. You boost one of your guys way up with Beauclair, then you reset with Beauclair or something like that. So you can get a lot of value out of this deploy effect, even though on paper it looks like you're just giving your opponent the same amount of points you're gaining. That being said, they can do the same thing to you. So it has a lot of counterplay to it, and depends on what the opponent deck is. Against Point Slam decks, this is going to be fantastic if you can reset. So overall, quite good, and the order is also really good. So I think this guy is a very strong card, which will probably be seeing quite a bit of play. However, he does have counters. He can be purified. He goes really tall. You can banish him. So we'll see how that works out. Next up, then, we have Buhurt. 4 Provision Tactic. Has boosts an enemy unit by 3, then an allied unit by 3. Or, an allied unit by 3. An allied unit by 9. This reminds me a lot of Mardrome. Mardrome damages by 3, then boosts by 9. So overall, it's a net 6. But you can change that by hitting an armored unit. You can change it by hitting something that triggers Berserk. Well, not Berserk. You can trigger something, hit something with armor. You can hit something that heals itself. You can hit something that, you know what I mean. Like, it's a lot of ways to use Mardrome in Skellige that work out pretty well. And in this case, it's similar, right? You're getting 9 boosts with a conditional 3 value reduction. With Mardrome, it's 3 damage. You mitigate with armor. In this case, it's 3 enemy boost, and you mitigate it by using stuff that removes the boost from the opponent's card or gains value from it. For example, the Gilame we just looked at. If you boost up an enemy unit by 3 and then play him, his combined power is higher, then you reset the opponent unit, and that doesn't matter. And then you boost by 9. One of the issues with this card, though, is that boosting by 9 is a lot and makes you target for removal. However, if all your cards are going tall, that's not as big a problem, except for Yurden, obviously. So I think one more thing to mention with this card is it is a 4 Provision Tactic that is not a damage card. And is not Obsidian Mirror. There's not that many 4 Provision Tactics Nilfgaard wants to play in enslaved decks, especially because a lot of the 5 Provision ones are damage cards, where you've got Assassination, Coded Weapons, and then usually you run like a Tourney Joust or 2 to fill out those 12 provisions if you want to run a full power Ardal or Stefan Skellen. So that's worth noting that this could be just a good inclusion there. That's not a damage card on a special. So that's probably worth noting too. I think this card will see like situational play. If you're playing a deck with all these boost cards, you probably run this, but we'll see. It does have potential uses outside that, especially like I mentioned in Tactics or Enslave, because you do need those tactic cards, and sometimes you just want to change the variety of what tactics you're running, so not all damage cards, but we'll see. Overall, though, I think this card's alright. We'll probably see it a few times. Last up then, and the one that strikes me as the best of the Nilfgaard cards, probably because I have a soft spot for 4 Provision power cards, is the Knight Challenger. So he's a human knight, 5 power, 4 provisions. So he plays for 6 because of this ability here. Gain vitality equal to the amount of boost on enemy unit. So this is extremely strong going first, because they're going second. If they Crystal Skull or Tactical Advantage, this is a 9 or 10 for 4 right away, which is amazing, and then it has a Grace effect. So let's cover the Grace effect real quick here. Grace 8 boosts all units by 1. If you're playing this early, it's going to give you like 1 or 2 point boost. But remember, this is a 4 Provision card. This is essentially what Redanian Knight does. Redanian Knight boosts adjacent units by 1 when it reaches its Grace 8. And if you only have 2 units, like you play this, then play 2 more cards, let the Vitality tick up to 8, it's going to give you the same value as Redanian Knight while still giving you a point a turn as long as the Vitality is there, while having 3 more base power. It doesn't have the armor or the exposed effect, but it's still really, really good. And just keep in mind that if you play this on a 2 boost card, or like a 3 boost card, say you Buhurt something and you play this will tick to 8, which will mean this will play for 8, and then I'll boost 2 adjacent units, or at least 2 units with this, because they don't have to be adjacent or anything by 1. That'll be 10 for 4. This card is insane value potential. Imagine this in like a soldier long round. Not necessarily going to be wanting to run soldiers with knights. I'm just saying, if you have like 10 units out, this Grace 8 is boosted by 10. That's insane. This card has such a high ceiling, and its floor is very high as well. Like, you play this at 5, if they have any boost at all, it'll be a 6 the turn you play it. So I think this is really good. I just think this is one of the best 4 Provision cards in the game. But I could just be like making this up because I'm wrong, but I think this card's insane. Yeah. The ceiling on this is so high, I can't imagine it really being bad unless there's no units. Especially because you can boost the opponent's cards for yourself with the other ones you have now. It does take time for the Vitalities, but the Grace doesn't take that long. Like, you play this and it gets to 6, then 2 turns later you get to 8. You can also boost it with something else to trigger the Grace 8. Yeah, I can't see this card being bad. It's a point ceiling and the floor is so high for a 4 provision card that, yeah, this card's kind of insane. Let me know if you agree with that one or not. Moving on to Scoia'tael, they're all kind of tied into Aquan here, so we'll start with her. She's a 5 power, 13 provision magic. She's 5 provisions. That'd be crazy. So she's a legendary Dryad Naiad. which is the new tag we have here, which I probably pronounced wrong. Again, I'm sorry about that. But she supports Symbiosis. So Symbiosis here, deploy and fuse all your Naiads with the Nature category wherever they are. So this makes them all Nature cards. This is fantastic for Symbiosis because one of Symbiosis' biggest problems is you have to play out these Symbiosis cards, and then they have to stick while you're playing specials that are Nature cards afterward. Now, if you're playing units that have effects that trigger Symbiosis because they're Nature cards, and have additional effects combining with Symbiosis, it makes them basically count as two things, right? You're getting that Nature card to trigger the Symbiosis, and you're getting more engine cards or effects at the same time. That's very, very, very strong. So that's really good. Then we have her other ability. Whenever you spawn a Wandering Treant, give it vitality equal to the number of Dryads you control. This has insane engine potential. As at the very least, you play her, you infuse the Naiads, she'll infuse herself, so on her deploy, she'll count as a Nature card. So you play her, spawn a Wandering Treant, that Treant will get a vitality. If you're playing Nature's Gift, it will get an additional, well, it won't get additional vitality, because this is the number of Dryads you control, not the number of Symbioses you have. So this thing plays for 7, which is okay. But then the potential for the round gets insane. Because if this isn't a long round, and every time you play a Treant, it's getting 3 or 4 vitality, that adds up very, very fast. So you kind of have to remove her. And then all of the other Naiads will have the Nature category. I think you I want to play all the Naiads with this. Like, just put them all into the deck with Symbiosis. Symbiosis itself has weaknesses, like Yurden, resets in general are really good versus it. Locks are less good because you have Purify and Dryad's Caress, which you're going to run a lot of times just because it's a Nature that plays for 6 and gives the vitality to Hamadryad. But this thing is kind of insane. Symbiosis, I think, needed a little help, but we'll see. Maybe you'll be running Igni or Yurden instead of Igni now to deal with this, but she's very good, and she makes all the other Naiads Nature categories, which is really helpful. Let's take a look at the other ones real quick here to see just what their effects are, because I think you play all of them together. So we got the Frog Mating Siege in first. This is a Nature card. Now this card is very, very strong for a couple reasons. So first of all, you choose 2 allied units, give them vitality 4. On paper, that's 8 value. Spawn a frog on each side. The frogs are 1 power tokens. This is 12 value, but the vitality has to tick, right? Well, let's take a look at the frog token real quick here. It's a beast token, doomed. At the end of your turn, trigger vitality of adjacent units and order move self to other row. So you play this, each unit has a frog on each side. Each frog will tick the vitality once, the vitality will tick. You get 10 points on the turn you play this, and it makes your vitalities go faster. If you have stuff like the Treants from Aquan going with their vitalities, like she goes out here, you have like vitality 6 on a Treant or something, and then you play this, it'll tick faster. It's very good. You can play this early too because of the order on the frog token. If we take a look again, order move self to the other row. This is amazing just because the Wandering Treants for Aquan will always spawn at the right side of the row. And if you move a unit, it goes to the right side of a row. So if you're spawning Wandering Treants with like 6 vitality at the end of your row, you can click this, move it to that row, and then it will start boosting up those vitalities faster. And not to mention the Nature cards trigger Symbiosis. This thing's really good. It just has insane synergy with Symbiosis, insane synergy with Vitality. It plays for a good amount. It has uses outside of that because it puts 4 tokens in a row for Great Oak. Puts 4 tokens in a row if you want to run Gezros. Those tokens, by the way, do die to 1 damage. So hitting this row with like a 1 damage effect might be what you want to do. But overall, this seems very good as a card. Yeah, this card just seems really, really good. There's our Frog token. Next up, we have Naiad Pondkeeper. So this one is the one I'm less sure about, but we'll talk about it real quick. So it's a 5/5 Dryad Naiad. Remember, if you've played Aquan, this will be a Nature card. Worth noting, by the way, that playing Aquan might be the problem with the deck. You're going to want to run a lot of consistency to make sure you get her early, or potentially later and keep these. It's up to you. But I think you're definitely going to be wanting to make sure you have consistency for Aquan, which cuts away provisions from the rest of the deck, right? But anyway, Naiad Pondkeeper has Deploy. She's a 5/5, so that's pretty good. Deploy Melee. Choose an allied Wandering Treant. Damage an enemy by its power, then reset the Treant. So this gives you net value of 1, because the Treant being reset goes to 1, and then you've done damage equal to its power, which is 1 plus its boost. So on Deploy, it's at least a 6 total value on Deploy. However, you can do a lot of conditional damage with this. If you have a 10, well not 10, like even a 5-power Treant, you play this, you can kill a 4% engine. Very flexible, but also takes setup. Getting Treants larger, if you don't want to play stuff like special cards on the Treants, it takes a while to get them boosted. but it's still pretty good. Like, I think this effect's pretty good, but it's conditional. Like, longer rounds, you might want to have this. But then again, by the time you get the tree out large enough, unless you're using leader charges or a special card on it, it might be too late to remove what you want to remove. So I'm not so sure about that one, but it does have, like, decent value. We'll see how this plays out. It depends how often you can get a lot of wandering tree ants out really fast. Then she has deploy ranged, infuse a non-symbiosis unit with symbiosis. This is reminiscent of Antharian, except that is a deploy instead of an order. And that symbiosis used to be worse than harmony, now that you could do stuff with chameleon and the scenario. However, I think this is pretty good. Like, this is pretty useful if you don't want to use the melee order. I'm not sure. I think this is the weaker of the cards, but I think you might still see it play just because giving a unit the ability to count as a nature is really good in symbiosis. But let's take a look at the other unit. So the other bronze is a 5 provision 4 power Naiad Fledgling. So again, Dryad Naiad, whenever your symbiosis is triggered, give the unit to left vitality 2. Combos really well with the Frog Mating Season, combines really well with just like engine value in particular. If you put the unit you're playing to the left of her and it's a Naiad, for example, give vitality 2. The weakness of this is if you're triggering symbiosis with special cards, you'll keep stacking vitality on the same unit, which can be bad, except she has this order. Remove all vitality from allied unit and boost self by the same amount. So this is a net gain of 0 points. Right, because you're removing the vitality you would get otherwise and boosting self. But if that vitality wasn't going to trigger, it's really good. If your vitality's on a really tall unit, say your Hama Dryad's like at 20 and it has vitalities, not that you'd want to remove vitality from Hama Dryad, it's just an example. You could take those vitalities off and boost this. Yeah, it's just really good. If you have Aquan out and you have your tree ants in like 8 vitalities, which are never going to trigger, you can just use this and then turn that 8 vitality into 8 points. But really, the effective triggering symbiosis is really good for the vitality too, right? That's essentially 2 turns on your symbiosising, which is good. And yeah, I think this card's pretty good. It has really good engine value. It has a nice effect to remove vitality to give you the boost. And overall, I think this card's pretty good. And again, like if you're playing Aquan, you're probably running all of these. So I think the symbiosis package will be quite good here. Just gotta watch out because it's always weak to like. I mentioned Cahir in the Nilfgaard section. It's weak to Cahir. The Nilfgaard cards work really well against this, so that's one thing to keep in mind. That the new Nilfgaard cards will be very good against the Naiads. Maybe you wait until the Nilfgaard cards get less popular. You never know. But yeah, and Yurden will be a big threat to symbiosis, as it always is. But overall, these cards seem pretty good. Next up, Scoia'tael Mastermind. If you want my opinion on Scoia'tael Mastermind, I'll keep this quick. Check out the reveal video I did. But overall, yeah, Scoia'tael Mastermind, 4 power, 12 provisions. He's got deploy, look at collusion, and a random card from each gang in your deck, then play 1. Tribute 9, play 2 instead. Tribute cost less for each gang. Yeah, I mentioned a lot of ways you can use Sigi in my card reveal video, so check that out so I don't repeat myself too much here. But yeah, this is insane. I mean, playing 2 is ridiculous, and especially if the tribute costs less. You can do so much with this. The biggest thing I think we'll see is collusion plus tunnel drill as a finisher, because that is absolutely ridiculous. But we'll see. Like, I think this card's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Next up we have Bart. Bart is a 6 power, 8 provision Ogroid for the Syndicate. Good old troll Bart here. So 4 armor. So he's very difficult to remove. 6 power, 4 armor. That's not easy to kill at all. So whenever you play a unit with a gang category you don't control, gain a coin for each gang category you control. Now, supposing you play 1 from each gang in order, get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 coins, which is 21 coins. Obviously very, very good. You can speed up the coins by playing dual unit factions, but then you'll skip. So like you'll play, you go from, say you play, what's the one I used for the example the other day? And say you play Mutants Maker. It's got 2 gangs on it. You play it, you get 2 coins after you've played it, and the next one gives you 3. And then if you played another double, it'll give you 4. So you get less coins, but you get more coins faster, if you know what I'm saying. So I think overall, this is really good for these collusion decks. This can give you a ton of coins, and the thing with this card is it's so hard to remove. 6 power, 4 armor is kind of insane. And remember, Syndicate has Adalbertus, which is a lot of purifying. So locking this might not be the best idea, but if they're running Adalbertus, you could lock Adalbertus after, but then you have to kill this. So I think Bart's really insane. This card's really good. That being said, these collusion type decks were very, very bad before, so we'll see if this is enough to make them actually like competitive. I think that these cards are strong enough that might be. But let's take a look at what the bronzes are here then. We have Little Bird, Human Agent, 5 for 5. Deploy Infuse Self with a gang category of a unit in your deck. Fee 2, boost an allied unit by 1 for each gang category you control. Cooldown 1. This fee is potentially the best fee in the game. Fee 2, there are 6 gangs. Fee 2, boost a unit by 6. It's absolutely ridiculous. But it does have cooldown 1. It didn't have cooldown 1, this would be a monstrous finisher. As it is, it's just a very strong engine card. Even if you only have 3 gangs. Like this infuses itself with a gang, and you play Bloody Good Friends, that's 3 gang categories. And this is a 3 for 2, which is good value. So I think in these collusion decks, this card is fantastic. Like, this is a very good engine. Yeah, this card's just really good. The cooldown 1 is the only thing making it from being like one of the best spenders in the game. It might be one of the best spenders because of the value you can get. But remember, for these collusion decks, their weakness is you need a long round, or at least a medium round, where you get all the gangs out. She only needs like 3 or 4 gangs to be really good, but if you're killing off units with control cards, these will be much worse. And then this card's fee is kind of really bad, because it'll be fee 2, boost 1 if she's your only unit. But the fact that she gets to pick which gang she's in really helps with collusion, stuff like that. So overall, I think this card's really good. Really good. There's just so much high potential in this fee that killing a 5 for 5 probably means they'll die, but if they don't, you get so much value that this card's probably going to be good. Last for Syndicate, then, we have Pulling the Strings. It is a crime. Profit 0. Sees an enemy unit with 0 less power. However, increase profit by 1 for each unit gang in your starting deck. This is going to be 6. You're going to have 6 gangs in your starting deck, most likely, if you're playing this. So profit 6 for 5. What is the Pickpocket is 8 for 6, I believe. So it's a little less efficient than Pickpocket, but it's a bronze. And then you have increase the power and increase profit by 1 for each unit gang category you control. So say you have 6 gangs, you seize a 6 but gain no coins. If you seize a 2 and you have... So you seize a 2, you'd get 4 coins and seize a 2. Very, very flexible and very high potential on these collusion decks. Now, the amount of crimes you want to run in collusion decks is usually limited just because you need to have units for the gang categories. But this might be good enough that you want to consider it. I think this card's really good. Profit 6 is like playing Swindle, the high roll, but that's a 4 provision. So we'll see on this. But I think this card will be played because the ability to seize a 6 is really good. If you seize a 3, it's still 6 and you gain coins. So I think this card's pretty strong. The only weakness really for this thing is that if you don't have the gangs out, it's just a profit card. But then again, that's not bad, right? Sometimes you just want to open with a profit card, get coins for a spender. Like, this isn't bad. I think this card's pretty good. The seize flexibility is really nice on it. So if you can get gangs out there and choose what you want to take, it's really nice. And yeah, I think this card's good. Syndicate cards overall seem very strong, especially Seeker-Ruven Mastermind. Collusion's a very strong card if it goes off, and he makes it very consistent, and these all support collusion. So I think we'll finally see collusion probably be seen played, which is nice. So if I played it before, it's kind of a meme, but yeah. And the other uses are for the Seeker-Ruven Mastermind in particular. It just has so many uses, and I think a lot of Syndicate decks will be taking advantage of him. So Syndicate cards seem really good. Really, really good. Let's move on to the next faction. Next up, we have Skellige. So Ulula is a probably use. Can't always tell with the Gwent text. So we have 8 provisions, 6 power, human warrior. More warrior synergies, nice to see. So order damage unit by 2. So on paper, 8 for 8 if you get the order off. You probably will get the order off unless they kill it. Because locking this, well, maybe they lock it. This is a good card to lock. So whenever an enemy unit takes damage from your warriors, damage it by 1, including its armor. So this means as long as you've hit the unit with damage, it will take another damage and ignore its armor. So as an engine card, this is really good. Because a lot of Skellige cards do ping damage, right? You've got stuff like Herald. You've got stuff like the Drummond Berserker guy. You've got stuff like the ships that do 1 damage. The ships are not warriors, by the way, so that one is not a good example. But I'm just saying there's a lot of ping damage and damage effects in Skellige. So comboing this with something like Hemdall, for example, does a lot of damage. So this card's pretty good if you have those kind of effects out on the field. And some of the new warrior cards we'll get to in a minute also give you effects like that where they do damage. So Overall, this could add up to quite a bit over the course of a round, but it might not be something the opponent removes right away, but it is a probably good target for a lock. Next up, we have Feral Bond. This is a raid for provisions. As we all know, raids are really good because of Highland Warlord. So spawn Skellige wolves on an enemy row and damage it by 1, then create a bronze Skellige warrior. Bloodthirst 3 may spawn and play any Skellige warrior instead. So assuming you've played one Highland Warlord, this will always kill the wolf, which means that it is 4 provision, create a bronze Skellige warrior. Now, raid decks can struggle for not having units, but this will always create a unit for you. And if you've got Bloodthirst 3, you can spawn and play any bronze Skellige warrior instead, so you can pick the Skellige warrior in that case. Note that killing the wolves makes that harder because there's no damaged wolf to help you get that Bloodthirst up. But overall, I still think this is probably pretty good. I don't know how it plays in raid decks, honestly. As while it is nice, you always get the extra damage and kill the wolf token. The wolf token, by the way, is a 2-power immune. The nice thing about this is that even though you kill the wolf, it makes it harder to get the Bloodthirst. And the raids really like scaling the damage and hitting units with it. This doesn't hit anything else except the wolf token, so maybe it doesn't get played in those raid decks. It might be getting played in a new type of deck where you use the raids and not Highland Warlords. Imagine that. But yeah, you can spawn and play any bronze Skellige warrior. It's a very nice effect because you can pick what you need. You can get something like a great sword, which might get up to 10 power. You can play something like whichever warrior you need at the time, right? This has a lot of flexibility. And it's only 4 provisions, so maybe you can justify running this if you just want to have more bronze warriors in your graveyard. Who knows? Overall, though, I think this card's interesting. I'm not sure you're going to be playing it that much, just because the Bloodthirst 3 condition, you might want to have trouble setting up. But I think it's pretty good, especially if you can play some of the newer ones, and the warriors have good value. So I think this won't be played in all the Skellige decks, but warrior decks will probably consider running it. Although warrior decks have a lot of options to choose from already. This is the Skellige wolf token I mentioned before. It's 2-power, it's a beast immune, doomed, and has Deathwish spawned a base copy of self on the opposite row. Worth mentioning that because it makes the Feral Bond really good. Be honest here, I forgot about the Deathwish effect. So yeah, the Feral Bond, yeah, with the extra effect that when you kill the wolf, it goes to another field. This makes this very, very strong, actually. Can't believe I forgot about that. Sorry about that, guys. Just ignore what I just said. But yeah, getting the wolf to your side means that this creates a bronze Skellige warrior and a 2-power wolf. Very, very good. Very good value, especially if you're getting that spawn and play. So yeah. The wolf token has that Death Wish to spawn a base copy of itself on the opposite row, which means that if you're getting that Highland Warlord and you kill the token every time you play Feral Bond, you're going to get a 2-power token and create a bronze Skellige warrior. Really nice, although it does make it harder to get the Bloodthirst 3 if you're killing the wolf token each time. Probably worth it for the extra value, though. You could just leave that token out there and count on ping damage to hit it, but the wolf is immune, so you can't target it. But overall, I think this is a really good raid card. And yeah, I think we'll see quite a bit of people trying this just because there's so much value. So much value from this. And there's some good bronze Skellige warriors for sure. Next up, we have Brockvar Warrior, another 4 provision human warrior. So you could make this with the new raid card. 2 power for provisions. So human warrior deploy damage enemy by 3. So that's really good value. It plays really well against the new Reaver cards for Northern Realms. And then if the target is damaged, repeat the deployability of different target and decrease damage by 1. So 3 damage, then 2, then 1. You cannot do the 1 damage back to the thing you hit with 3. So you can't, like if they have 2 units, you can't do 4 to 1 of them, which is worth noting. But if you hit everything with this ability, is an 8/4/4, including 6 damage, which is really, really good. If you have the new Ulalu, whatever it's called out here, I think that was a random mobile ad I saw earlier today. Ulala, whatever her name is. Yeah, this is really good. She's out there. These all do an extra damage. That's pretty insane value. You can bring us back with stuff like, what's it called? The War of Clans. And as a 4 provision warrior, it has a ton of value potential. And just doing damage is really good, obviously. And this card will help set up Bloodthirst, which is probably one of the strongest things. Setting Bloodthirst up with this will be really nice for their cards. So overall, I think this card's really good. It's a 4 provision warrior. It has a good effect. It's going to be pretty strong, I think. Then we have Sov here. 11 for 11 with immune immediately makes me think of a finisher. That's kind of insane. Really good stat line. And then we look at its ability. So Zeal Order, summon a beast from your deck to the opposite row and infuse it with Death Wish. Boost the enemy Sov twice by own base power, then damage it by 1 for each damaged enemy unit. So if the opponent has 8 damaged units, you play Sov, you summon out Raging Bear, it gets the Death Wish, then Sov's Order finishes triggering, damages the bear by 8, Sov will get plus 16 boost, making him play as a 27 for 11. However, it is worth noting this takes a lot of setup, because if you don't have this setup, you're just summoning a unit to their field, and they're going to purify the infused status off. So, gotta be careful about that. But Sov has huge potential, right? Raging Bear is probably the best example. You could do Olaf for a couple more points. It's also worth noting, by the way, this one's probably more conditional, probably like a funny highlight video, but Melusine is a beast. So if somehow you put Melusine back in your deck, or, yeah, I'm not sure, if you could, like, decoy your Melusine into your deck, and then use this on Melusine, and then get a plus 30 twice, it'd be really funny, but I don't think it's going to happen, but if someone pulls that off, I would love to see a clip of it, because that'd be funny. But yeah, I think most of the time it's going to be Raging Bear that you're going to use with this. You can also summon a lower power beast, even if you just do a 4 power beast. What's the Savage Bear, right? It's the 4 power one. Do Savage Bear, Bloodthirst, essentially that. This is, you're looking for your Bloodthirst count for the damage units. If you give summon out a 4, this is a 19 for 11. If it kills a 4, that's still good. Like, a beast deck might really like this. But yeah, it has really good potential. The only thing is you need that setup, which is probably justified for something that's as strong as this. So it does have immune and it goes really, really tall. So yeah, I think this card's pretty good. You're definitely going to want to kill the unit the turn you play it, but again, you don't have to do it with the effect from this guy, right? You say you summon out Raging Bear, it gets damaged by like 2 or 3 or something. It goes to 5. You could use like Onslaught Leader charges. You could use something that you have Order set up for damage to kill it off with. So overall, I think this is going to be pretty good. It's going to be a really nice finisher that you have. Just got to watch out for Yurdens and Ignis and such. But yeah, this card seems really good. They just need the setup. So the question is, will that setup be easy enough or people use it? Watch out for Purifies. And this is going to be pretty leader dependent, I think. Because the leaders that do damage will be much better with this. But then again, the Onslaught does not boost pirates and ships. This is a warrior. So most likely I'm going to be using this, if I had to guess, and something like Blaze of Glory with warriors. In which case, you could always use the Blaze of Glory ability to kill the bear with it. So you could even use this as a finisher in that case, like you just summon this. You just play this, you summon, I'll just use Olaf here. You play this, you summon Olaf. You send your Yutta for your leader ability. Yutta kills Olaf. And then this is a 31 point finisher, which is good, but there's other finishers like Ace and stuff. So maybe we'll see a different way to play Blaze of Glory. Maybe we'll just see this in decks. Maybe we'll see beast decks. You never know. This card is a pretty interesting effect. I think it's going to be a good card. It just takes a little bit of setup, which is perfectly fine in my opinion. It's still going to be pretty strong. Last, then, we have the monsters cards, starting with Tyrannalia. So, 12 version location, Wild Hunt Resilience, deploy boost an allied unit by 0, increased by the number of unique Bronze Wild Hunt cards in your starting deck. There are 2 more Bronze Wild Hunt cards being introduced. Most likely, this is going to boost by like 8 to 10, somewhere in that range. More likely on the lower end, because you run a lot of non-Wild Hunt cards like Foglets in these decks. And if you have duplicates of cards, maybe you only have like 6 or so. But overall, it's still a decent boost on a deck that relies on dominance. So that's nice that it synergizes there. Order, spawn Frost and opponent's melee and ranged rows, equal to the amount lost on round transition, then spawn and play Red Riders. So assuming that you didn't lose any Frost value, which is kind of unlikely, you get 2 turns of you just get a Red Riders order, which is nice to synergize with your cards. So that's not bad, but if you've lost stuff, like say you played your Ardgaith at the end of round 1, and they pass because the value's going to add up, you order will then spawn 2 and 2, if that's what you had carried over. And then you'll play Red Riders, and you get 4 turns of Frost on each row. This is a nice order. And Wild Hunt has a bit of... Wild Hunt used to have a problem with over-frosting. Like, you'd play too many Frost cards and not enough units, and it was hard to balance the deck building. But with this, you can really get a lot of Frost, and maybe you don't have to run as many Frost cards. Or if you do run Frost cards, you can carry over that value to another round, where the Frost won't be wasted. Again, though, this synergizes best with Winter Queen, but Winter Queen's probably going to come out in round 1 if you're playing a Frost deck. And she'll die, because she never lives, but... I think overall this card's pretty decent. The boost is really nice with one of the new cards we'll get to. And the Frost effect is nice to spawn Frost, so you don't have to like keep a Red Riders in your hand round 3 if you've played your Arcgate twice. But I think we'll see. I like this card. I really like Wild Hunt as a deck, but I think this one's pretty decent. We'll see how well the boost combines with the other cards, and if that Frost carryover really matters, or if you have too much Frost in your deck. It's going to be hard to balance that out, but overall I think the card's pretty good. Probably said that about all the cards here, because it's kind of my opinion of them. We have an Aristocrat here, 4/4 Elf Aristocrat Wild Hunt. Now, order dominance, move an enemy unit to the other row. This, it's just kind of like an effect that's just there if you need it. You don't have to use this like ever unless you want to use the dominance effect to move something, but you can use it. Really nice against Scoia'tael, against defenders. It comes in handy more often than you realize. And then we have at the end of your turn, spawn Frost 1 turn on each enemy row to which Frost is applied this turn. This is a very strong potential engine card, because if you're playing an extra turn of Frost each turn, that Frost is worth 4 points. This is potentially a 4 a turn if you're spawning Frost every turn. Now then again, spawning Frost every turn, the Frost won't really add up, but you could do it in round 1, and then use your Tyrrhenal, whatever the card was, his name I already pronounced, Tyrrhenalia. You could use that, and then with this, you could like say spawn 15 turns of Frost round 1 if they don't kill this, and just carry it over all through round 2 and push with it. That's a possibility. Yeah, this has a lot of potential. A lot of potential. It makes your leader charges play for an extra charge as well. Yeah, this just is pretty good. Like, the effect is really good if you want more Frost. The other thing you gotta watch out for is having too much Frost on enough points, but overall, I think this card's good. I really like the way it spawns extra Frosts, and having that dominance move effect is really nice. Although you already have Bruisers to move, so it's not like a requirement for Wild Hunt. Bruisers is already a movement card you play a lot because it's got decent value. But I think with this in the deck, we'll see more movement and more Frost. And Leader has movement too, by the way, the Frost Leader, so the movement effect is just if you want it. I don't know if it's going to be that key to the card, but the ability to spawn extra Frost is... You're probably going to play this with like a Leader Charge or like a Foglet. You can have a Foglet out and use your second Leader Charge. Overall, I think this card's pretty good, but I'm not sure it'll be integral to the deck, because you already have a lot of ways to get Frost, and it's a 4/4 without any other engine value, so most likely it just dies when you play it, but if they don't kill it, you can get some good potential. The On-L Slave Trader is a 3/5. Deploy, gain vitality equal to total duration of Frost on the opponent's side of the battlefield, and infuse an enemy unit with at the end of your turn if there's an enemy On-L Slave Trader with higher power than your own, set power to 1 and lock self. So, right away, this is the first Monsters Lock card in the game. It's very conditional and interactive, which I quite like, and it has really good potential. So you play this, and it gains vitality. Suppose you have... Well, it's a Wild Hunt card, so you're probably it's gonna play for 4 with that 1 point boost. And if you have Oberon out, it plays for 5 and gets that vitality up to a 6. So right away, if the opponent's unit's a 4, you'll lock it and set it to 1 once the vitality ticks. If you have like 1 turn of Frost out, which you're always gonna have a turn of Frost out pretty much, you can lock and set a 4 power to 1 right away, which means that this card will play for 5, and then it'll set down to a 3. If it has a Frost boost, right? We'll just take... I guess we'll neglect the Frost boost. Say it plays for 4, and then it sets a 4 power engine to 3. Yeah, that's good value. That's an 8/5. That's pretty good. It locks, which is nice. Yeah, and if you have a second one, like if you have one out already, that's like at 10, and you play a second one, it'll immediately check that it doesn't say this On-L Slave Trader. So it'll just an On-L Slave Trader. So if you have another one, say you're making one with Oberon and your first one's at like 10, you can just reset whatever you want and lock it. That's under 10. So I think this card has really good potential. It has good synergies with the location, because that boost will get this guy up pretty high. It's probably get locked itself though if the opponent has a chance or kills it. So you really want to have a good effect the first time you play it. Notably very strong round 1, because you can put tactical advantage on this and lock whatever you want, which is Wild Hunt has a really good round 1 in general. But against engine decks that are heavy engine decks, sometimes they have a little bit of trouble. This helps with that. So overall, I think this card's quite good. It's nice having a lock in Monsters, finally. Although, I don't think Syndicate does yet. But yeah, I think this card's really good if you're going to get value from the lock. As a value Wild Hunt card, I'm not so sure. There's a lot of Wild Hunt cards you want to run. It's kind of hard to fit them in. In the bronze section in particular, like 5 to 6, there's a lot of cards. Especially if you want more for the location now. You want more bronzes. But overall, I think this card's pretty good. Having a lock's nice. Having it synergized with dominance in the, well, kind of dominance. It has its like its own personal dominance versus the targeted unit. So I think this card's pretty good. It's not an immediate lock, right? Because remember, the infuse is at the end of the turn, so if the opponent boosts the unit you're targeting with this, then it won't be taller. But then the reset's bigger when it does go off, if it goes off. Or they could just kill the slave trader. So it's not a guaranteed, even if you have the value right away. Because the opponent has to go, right? Because the infused affects the end of the opponent's turn, right? You infuse their units at the end of their turn. So there's interaction with it, but they're going to have to keep trying to protect that unit, or they can just give up on it. And then, yeah, I think this card's pretty good. I think it's pretty good. I don't think it's insane. Like, it's not a super duper lock, but it has good value if the opponent lets it go through. And I think that makes it very interesting. I really like this card. Lastly, we have Chronicles Golden Child. He's a epic card. He's a 1/8. So at the start of turn, while in hand or deck, reset own power and boost self by damage dealt by Frost in the last 5 enemy turns. So this is a finisher, and if you have Frost in both rows for 5 turns in a row, and then you play Chronicles Golden Child, that Frost will do 4 damage each turn, and this will play for 20. Which is insane. However, if they have armor, there's only playing in 1 row. That's less valuable, though, the playing in 1 row thing, because monsters with Wild Hunt Frost tends to have a lot of lock. This is going to be a great finisher card, or whatever round you're in. If you've only done, like, if this plays for 12, it's good, right? Like, Herald Gord is capped at plus 12. If this thing plays for, like, 14 or 16, it's better than Gord. That takes quite a bit of turns. The Frost damage, though, worth noting. He's got that +1, actually, so play for 21 in that case. But yeah, if you've done, if you just have Frost in 1 row for 5 turns, he plays for 11. That's pretty, like, happens pretty much every game. So yeah, overall, this seems like a really good finisher card. Something monsters with Wild Hunt really wants. You could play it early to give yourself dominance for everything. You're going to want a finisher with it, though, I think, because resetting this is so valuable. But yeah, it's a really nice finisher card. It combos really well with the other ones, and overall, I really like the monsters cards here. Are they enough to make Wild Hunt good? I don't know. Wild Hunt's really hard to fit cards in when you get new cards, because there's so many cards you really want in the deck. Like, you want Aridin, you want Oberon, you want, like, something to banish with Osriel for a big boost to get dominance. You're going to want the Ancient Foglets. It's just a lot of cards you want to fit in the decks. But with these ones, I think they're worth fitting in. I think maybe they'll make Wild Hunt better again. Wild Hunt's a really fun deck to play, so hopefully these guys make it good again. And that's all the new cards. Overall, I'm really excited to try them out. I think Syndicate's cards might be the strongest. Yeah, there's just a lot of good cards overall, though, and I'm excited to try them all out. They all look really interesting and fun, and that's kind of the biggest deal to me, at least. That'll be it for this one, guys. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next time. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more. And you can check out some more videos over here. And thanks for watching.